Hey guys, let's do this again. Jan's opening clinic episode number 5 of season 20. And this will be a good one. A lot of tough questions. I learned a lot from the questions this time around. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. And let's jump right into the show, where we have a question by NickSazed. He's saying, hey Jan, I have a question about the marshal or the anti-marshal, to be more precise, in the topical 8A4 variation, yada yada yada. The books that I have, as well as your older material and the latest trends in the marshal series, give 8B4 and then after A5, D6, D3, bishop E6, pretty much take 11, knight BD2 for granted. Yep, 11, bishop takes E6. Very recent development for years. We'll put it on the board soon. But for years, not just in the Rui Lopez, but also in the Italian, people always thought, bishop e6, fe6, fine for black. That thinking has changed. Probably because computer thinking has changed on that, but also the more you move pieces around in these positions with black, the more you understand that life is not so simple. Anyway, he goes on to elaborate, however, recent games, so Aronian and Wojciech, Carlsen Aronian, well aware, have shown that 11 bishop takes e6 is a very serious try for white. Yep, yeah. He basically said what I just said. Maybe I should read first. What would you recommend to black to do in this line? I haven't really managed to find a comfortable way to equalize, especially in practical terms. The computer spits out 0, 0, 0 often enough, but it never quite feels that way. Thanks for all your work. Yeah, mainly agree. I think I have talked about this in my previous work quite a bit as well. Life is not so simple there, and I do know this line pretty well. I'm a marshal guy. But I do believe that it's no reason to... Should have done this before. Apologies. It's no reason to switch repertoires, really. And as you mentioned, the computer does spit out 0, 0, 0 quite a bit. So, while I understand that this is a popular line, and I agree that it is fairly testing, I also think that black's life is not all that miserable. So it's just chess, fashion, and theory moving on a little, and we have to adjust. After A4, B4 is the main line. If you really dislike all these bishop takes E6 positions, you can go bishop B7 here, D3, there's rook E8 or D6 here. But I've always been team, let's not put the bishop here against the E4, D3 construction. So A4, B4, A5, D6, D3, bishop E6. And bishop takes E6, partly, as mentioned, because the structure is tougher than we used to think. And partly because after knight BD2, bishop takes B3 has become very fashionable with this plan. Rook E8, bishop F8, D5. And it seems like black is equalizing. So white takes on E6, F takes E6. And yeah, tricky position. The black rook typically wants to go to D5, and one big part of the equation is always when can white advantageously open the center, and how does black react to it when it happens. There's no rules of thumb. Many a time removing the queen and then trying to go C5 to have our center a little more fortified against D4 is a decent plan. If we look at stuff move by move wise, knight b2 is the main line. There's some experiments with h3 and bishop e3, but knight b2 seems to be the most challenging. Rook to b8 makes a lot of sense, and now the latest fashion is to put this knight on b3. Just, overprotecting the pawn on a5, and also clearing the way for bishop developments. This is the position from the game So Aronian, where Levon went on to lose a tough game and Wesley won a very, very nice game after queen to c8. But as you also mentioned yourself, I don't think this is a theory thing. After queen to c8, h3, knight d8, bishop e3, this was played, c5, knight bd2, this typical maneuver, occupying the center, and the knight, now that c5 has been played, has nothing more to do on the b3 square. Knight c6, c3, rook b5. I'm not sure if it makes sense to approach all of this move by move, but I think Levon's plan was actually fairly instructive. And white playing d4 here. Here, computer-wise, you can equalize by taking and then going e takes d, c takes d, and c4. Wesley had analyzed all of this, also what happened in the game, so his home preparation was incredibly deep, and I was impressed with it, but it does not refute the anti-marshal. Like, this is what happened in the game, and Wesley went on to win a nice game. So, the comp line is stuff like this, but okay, it's normally easy to pick any game by Super Grandmaster and say at this point on move 22 he could have equalized by making the computer moves. So, general, I do agree with your point. I do agree that these positions aren't easy to play, but one just has to, I don't know what to do. Get comfortable with the idea that we have to work here to equalize and find some nice maneuvers, like this queen c8, knight d8. In general, yeah, take rook b8, rook b5, get the queen out of the way. In this position, for example, instead of queen c8, queen e8. Pretty decent move as well. Like looking towards the queen side, towards the king side, sorry. Preparing knight h5 in some lines. And also making room for this knight to shuffle around. For example, if white chooses to open the center now, we can just ignore it by going knight to d7, d5, knight to d8. Black seems to be doing fine. While after slower play here, let's say queen e2, knight d7 is an idea. And I thought the black position was very, very resilient in these lines as well. And so it's not so much a move-by-move issue, but yeah, what can I say? I agree, bishop takes e6 is a very serious try. And one has to, I don't know, work on it or just play it, get experience. Like, I've clicked plenty of buttons in these positions, but I'm not sure if clicking buttons or yelling out moves is the answer. Because as you said, there is a lot of 0-0s there. It's just a new type of position that we are growing more and more used to. Sorry if that's not, I should stop apologizing. It's hard to give an answer like, no, play these three moves and it's equal. It's a tough position, strategically complex, blah, blah, blah. Speedster. He's saying, hey Jan, what do you think about the Gibbons-Weidenhagen gambit, which goes d4, knight f6, g4? Is there enough compensation for the pawn, or is this line just bad for white? I do have thoughts on that topic. So, 1d4. Sorry. 1d4, knight to f6, and pawn to g4. Pawn is hanging. I guess that's why it's called a gambit. But my honest opinion is, in this position, the worst move is bishop h6, obviously. Second worst move, probably e4. Dropping a central pawn. Third worst move, g4. I don't think it's close. Or it's close between 2 e4 and 2 g4. But I can't think of a worse move. Other than that, everything else doesn't lose material. Like queen d2, d5, black is fine. But I'd still much rather have this than the position after g4. So, to answer the question, no, I don't think there's enough compensation. I think this is pretty bad gambit, because we don't get any development edge or structural compensation. So in short, we don't really get compensation. Knight takes g4, e4. And the lazy way to play, if you don't want to know anything else, is just go d6 here, cover the knight. And if it gets kicked, we go away. And we have starting position of a Pirz without a white g-pawn. Which, yeah, does not help white. If you want to be in more refute mode, you can go d5 here instead of d6, which looks tremendous for black. I guess white will probably play e5, and then just c5. If the knight gets tackled, it goes back to h6. And we have sort of an advanced French or advanced Caro, where white is missing the g2 pawn. Which, once again, is pretty bad news for white. So, pretty definitive answer here. Do not play 2g4. Unless you want to do it for fun and you don't mind being much worse with white after 2 moves. But no, there's no compensation. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Sorry, Speedster. Or maybe Speedster was wondering what to do against 2g4. And now he knows that you can take the pawn. Next question, and this question is a bit of a mic drop. I was very impressed with this one by LogicalNonsense. Because he's saying, I do not know how to equalize against 7 Queen f3 in the Taimanov Sicilian. After 1 e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4, cd, knight d4, knight c6, knight c3, queen c7, bishop e3, a6, queen f3, knight f6, castles, knight e5, queen g3, b5. MVL recently played 10 a3 against Anand, but I don't think it's as critical as 10 f4, knight eg4, bishop g1, h5, e5, b4, knight a4, knight e5, h3, knight f6, f5, bishop e7, bishop d3, bishop e7. Now I think black is fine after 17 bishop e4 castles, but after king b1, white is better, according to the computer, after castles, bishop h2, and h4, queen e1, queen h5, rook c8, g4, b3, etc. What continuation for black after 7 queen f3 would you recommend I check out? Now, if all of this, first of all, we should put it on the board, but if all of this sounds like gibberish to you, I understand. So I should explain what LogicalNonsense has done here, casually, phrased as a question, what do I do against 7 knight f3, against 7 queen f3 is, he's refuted the very main line that black is playing against 7 queen f3, and I did not know about this, and I do think that most of the world's best players probably did not have this, because as he's mentioned, there are many games in this line where they play 10 a3 or they play other moves against this very main line. So kudos to LogicalNonsense for refuting the Taimanov. Well, refuting is a bit strong, but yeah, for pointing this out, because I think this is very, very relevant theoretically. And it's tricky because it's one of those where your computer, even if you have a strong computer, at first says black is fine. So some people might move past that spot. But yeah, good work. So this is the position we're talking about. Sort of the starting position where MVL played a3, which is also interesting, but black seems alright. And instead f4, knight eg4, bishop g1, h5 has been discussed in many games. But after e5, b4, knight to a4, knight to d5, h3, knight h6. This very direct attack with f5 does seem extremely strong. And as mentioned, here you can see I have a weak engine running. At first it doesn't really understand this, but then if you give it some time, bishop e7. It turns out that this line with king to b1 is very, very tough for black to handle. I've tried some time. I've spent some time trying to fix this and gone into different directions, like here, rook to c8, g4, as LogicalNonsense gives, queen to a5, b3. I understand all these lines are very cryptic, but this is, yeah, button clicking stuff. Bishop e3, and black is in exchange and a pawn up, as king is so weak. The white is better after queen f3. So I've tried other things as well, like queen e1, whatever. I think, did he give most of this? I can never remember anything. Yeah, queen a5, b3, etc. Yeah, exactly, etc. b3, knight c3. This seemed to be the best. Oh, no, sorry. The best that black can get. But he's worse. King is weak, pawns are weak. Or king is not that weak currently. The pawns are weak. First I thought, okay, this has to be a draw with some clicking. But it's not easy at all. And I've come around to agreeing with LogicalNonsense that there are problems here. And I tried then, you know, going back a little, trying to find an improvement down the stretch. But it's not easy. So, truth is, I don't have an answer for you. I'm impressed. That's very, very good work. And it puts the Taimanov in some trouble because this was the absolute mainline these days. Is b5, f4, knight eg4, bishop g1, h5. I understand it's strange to think of this as the main line, but that's what the world's best players were doing. So when it comes to alternatives, I have to say I'm not a giant expert on the Taimanov, so probably you've already refuted this line as well. But I would think that maybe this bishop d6 going to e5 line might make a comeback now that we know that knight f6, knight e5, b5 is in trouble. Or now that we've concluded that, maybe there is some way to fix it, but I didn't find one. These positions, they were more en vogue in like, when was it, 2016? There was some Kramnik Caruana game. Then they got a little out of fashion, but I wasn't quite sure why. I think Caruana played knight f6, but here the knight g7 setup didn't look terrible for black to me. Once again, this is based on not a whole lot of work. But these positions, I thought they looked kind of okay, no? Two sets of minor pieces exchange. We have the plan to go rook b8, b4. Queen d2 looked sort of critical, trying to stop bishop b7. And here, I wanted some weird stuff, some f6. Clearing the f7 square for the knight. Knight c6, rook d6, knight d8, knight f7, and whatever. It did look playable. I understand it's not the only line. But currently, this is, yeah, the best I can see, this bishop d6, long castles, oops, sorry. Bishop d6, long castles, bishop to e5, with the usual disclaimer. Don't really know all that much. Anyway, thanks LogicalNonsense, that was, yeah, some important information, at least, for us 1e4 players out there. For you 1e4 players out there. I'm not really one of you. And yeah, I was impressed. Maybe LogicalNonsense has some correspondence games where he's been checking this line. Good stuff. Then we have MrNormalName. He says, "Hi Jan. After 1 d4, t5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, e3, e6, knight f3, knight bd7, queen c2, bishop d6, bishop e2, castles, castles, dc, bishop c4, b5, bishop b7, e4, e5, d e5, knight e5, knight d4. I have studied this a lot of theory from the white side, but I'm struggling to understand this position. You and me both. Is it a case that there is nothing to understand, just lots of variations? I think it is very much one of those cases. Or are there general principles inherent in the position? Yeah, I struggle with those, but I think this is very much a move-by-move position. It would be especially helpful if you could teach me something like always mat x with y. That's why you play a line like that, because there's no always mat x with y. You play this because you want to use your superior calculating power and your creativity, not because you want to follow rules. Well, I struggle with rules. I think this is a highly concrete situation, and I've always shied away from this because it's too weird and too move by move. So I normally, didn't trust this from the black point of view. I think it equalizes, but it felt like you have to play extremely, extremely precisely. And make sure you can always respond to A with B. Always meet X with Y. Is that the same like make sure you can always respond to A with B? They do sound very similar to me, MrNormalName. I know you do not like such vague questions, but as you said, I could find out the best move in a given position by switching my engine on, but I cannot give me such general advice. Stop using my own ramblings against me, MrNormalName. So what general stuff can I tell you? I generally would not play this position because it's, even for my very spacebar standards, I never felt like, it felt like this was a purge situation where no rules apply for one given position, and I just didn't like it. So let's put it on the board. Queen c2, bishop d6, bishop e2, castles. First of all, alternatives. There's this e5, where if you're looking for clarity, for rules, for structures, e d4, followed by knight b6, rook e8, queen e7, g6, whatever. I believe e5 leads to much more clear-cut positions than b5. When I was a Semi-Slav player, I used to play a lot of a6, which can sometimes transpose to territory that we're about to see. It fell somewhat out of fashion because of, what was it? I can't remember. 94 here. Oh no, I think you were supposed to start with queen c7. And then they went bishop d2, c5, 94. But I didn't think that was such a big assault on black's line. So now let's get to the position in question. b5, bishop to e2. Here also I would normally play a6, or I would transpose to my a6 business when there's rook d1 or knight g5. But I still thought those would be more manageable from the black point of view than these bishop b7 positions. When e4 is not forced, but it is the critical try. e4, e5, gotta go e5, d takes e, knight takes e5, and here either knight d4 or from the white side. I also thought knight h4 was an interesting move. This is some Aronian novelty from way back. When this stuff b4, knight f5, b takes c3, rook d1 seemed to end with a bit of a white edge. These other lines, knight h4, g6, f4, they're a mess. But I thought they were quite interesting as well. So now let's finally get here. Knight to d4. I'm not sure what rules apply. To me, this is really a we must go knight eg4 because we're worse strategically. That's the thing here. We don't have time to play a6, c5, which would be, I guess, generally speaking, nice plan because we want to free the bishop and activate and so on. But there is just absolutely no time for it. We just get crushed after knight f5. So basically we have to play move by move, meet fire with fire. And here we, try to use the absence of the knight on the king side by going knight eg4, taking h2. g3 is the only good move. Practice has shown that bishop g3, hg favors white. So there's a rule for you. Don't go for this position because here the white bishop pair and initiative weighs more than the black extra pawn. I think even queen d1 is endgame. So we pretty much should continue playing very sharply. Bishop c5. The rule maybe is now that the pawn blocked this bishop on this diagonal, finds a new diagonal to do work on. So always when they go g3 on move 14, play bishop c5. Then when they go knight f5, always play rook e8, move 15. I know I'm not being very helpful, but it's a position like that where pieces are dropped all over the board and we try to make the best moves. I never wanted to go here with black, and sometimes I saw, like, I think Shirov was struggling a bit from the black side here because he kept playing this and people would just test him in different computer lines. It's tough. Bishop f4, go queen b6. After king g2. Best of luck. There's also bishop takes g4, knight g4, and rook somewhere. Rook ac1, rook ad1. A very well prepared player. The Giris of the world, they can just play this position and draw it, I believe. That's what Giri did against Nakamura, for example. What was that game? Something like this. But yeah, if you want clarity and rules and meet this with that, then I would... First of all, I'm not sure if I would go for the Semi-Slav necessarily, because there's so many extremely sharp, messy move-by-move lines, like bishop d3, dc4, or knight f3, e6, bishop g5. So it's not an opening to play because of our superior understanding of what goes where in quiet positions and rules. There, yeah, I would rather play where Queen's Gambit declined or classical Slav, a6 Slav, stuff like that. Because the Semi-Slav is very much move by move. And that line you're talking about, I think objectively it's fine as mentioned. There is a lot of 0-0s in the main lines as well. But it's extremely direct and extremely space-barry. So not a position where I can help you with the generals. Not that I could help with the generals in any position, because I'm very much a move-by-move guy. But as I'm telling you, this one is especially tough. Theoretically, all fine though. Is this me clicking or is this a game? No, I think this is just random analysis of mine where I try to find something. It does hold, but it's tough. These are tough lines to play. That's what I'm saying. Thanks for the question, MrNormalName. And I think, basically, I agree with your point. Then we have, what is this, some feedback from Howard, number 1001. Hi, Jan. I vote for more time for each query. That means in-depth and especially equally good alternatives when we can choose depending on mood and circumstance. I don't know, I often feel like I think I'm doing a little more time per query now with the new format and the 1 hour shows. I also often feel like I don't have that much more to say on the topic. And when it comes to in-depth and alternatives, like for example about Howard's last question, I could talk for 2 hours about that position. But I feel that's more like video series territory, and also we wouldn't get anything done if Howard's last question was 2 episodes of Jan's opening clip. Was it Howard? No, sorry, MrNormalName. Sorry. This is Howard. So, I don't know. I don't think I'm on board with the more time and in-depth, because there's always a compromise on how much stuff we can cover in one episode. And also you want a bit of a contrast to the video series, where there's hopefully more in-depth stuff. Also, game references and ebook recommendations. Let's not overdo it, Howard. I don't know any ebooks. The one I know about I already told you. Your King's Gambit Kindle recommendation, it was under $5, was perfect. Yeah, that's our friend Ivan Salgado's refutation of the King's Gambit. That's a good one, but I think that's the only Kindle chess book I have. So, out of recommendations. Anyway, definitely like the new format and plan on catching this show every week. That's good news, because I just said I'm not planning to implement any of your suggestions. So I hope you'll still be around, and thanks for the feedback, Howard. Seriously speaking, I will of course tell you guys if I do have good sources on whatever we're talking about. But normally, frankly, nowadays, it's Stockfish and me and not much else when it comes to consulted sources, which I'm not sure is always a good thing. But that's how most GMs I know, at least, approach the world. Like, people aren't as diligent, like trying to search different sources, because you can get information clicking a button very, very quickly, and you don't really have to scan all that much for finding it. Or at least that's my theory. Niclas, Grandmaster, is saying, hi Jan. His last name is not Grandmaster, his last name is Huschenbeet. His title is Grandmaster. He's saying, hi Jan, thanks for doing these videos. I have 2 questions regarding the Berlin 5 Rookie 1. Firebrand that he is, always talking about the most exciting stuff, Niclas. 5 Rookie 1 Berlin. Question number 1. After 7 Bishop F1 Knight F5 seems to be a decent alternative to the main move Knight takes E5, but is not played that much. Do you have an idea why that is? Kind of. In the recent Carlsen Aronian game, this is question number 2. In the recent Carlsen Aronian game, Levon chose 10 Knight F5. And later against Giri in Leuven, 998, followed by Bishop C5. No one following the Berlin circuit closer than Niclas. I thought that 10 Rook E8 is simplest for black. Do you have any idea what Aronian might not like there? Thanks. I'm not sure, but let us look. The Berlin is sort of mixed territory for me. I don't normally play it, like I've done it once or twice, and I'm not an E4 player, but I've had to spend quite some time looking at it, even in the old days. With Leico, we spent quite a bit of time on it. So I've always sort of stayed in touch, and I always flirt with the idea of playing it with black. Problem for me is I play like Bundesliga Brett, board 7 or 8, and Thailand Open. This is the chess I normally play in a year. And normally I'm a favorite in, like, let's say, 20 of the 21, 22 games I play per year. And there, adding the Berlin to your repertoire will probably not do all that much for you. So, tangent aside, I know something about the Berlin, but not a deep connoisseur. And one reason why I'm not planning to pick it up is this line with rook e1, knight d6, knight takes e5, where if white chooses to, he can make the game very dry. With just playing this sort of symmetrical structure and then going from there. Anyway, I'm sure Niclas doesn't want general speeches, but hard lines. And his first question was, why don't they play knight f5 so much anymore? I don't think knight f5 is refuted. I think knight f5 is not an attempt to equalize move by move, which most of the world's top guys and most of the Berlin players want to do. After knight f5, more pieces stay on the board than after knight takes e5. The main move is knight to f3, which, yeah, obviously makes one more set of pieces on the board. d5, d4, short castles. And here, yeah, white chooses this knight to c3. Looks a little stupid, but it's been gaining some popularity, I thought. I'm not sure how good it is. But it leads to positions you normally don't get out of these rook e1 Berlins. Like my computer said, bishop b4 might be best here. That already leads to somewhat weird positions. Well, knight h4, which looks logical, to exchange this stupid knight. Takes, knight e2. Why does, they have some hopes in positions like that. Even though I won't pretend like this is any great revelations or refutations of the Berlin. I think it's mainly that after d4, white has these extra options, and also that in the very slow lines with c3, whatever, rook e8, knight bd2, it's not as easy for black to, kill the game, make some precise moves. Well, here, more pieces remain on board, and white, frankly, might be a little better in these positions. So I think this actually, if with black you're trying to play for a win, this might be a better shot because more pieces remain on the board, but sometimes it also backfires. Therefore, not that surprised that it's out of fashion, but I also don't think that there's any big refutation, big move-by-move stuff lurking around the corner. It's just that more pieces remain on the board, and since the black pieces are a little clumsier, they prefer going knight takes e5, rook takes e5, short castles, which makes the playing field little more manageable. Now we only have to improve this knight and we're fine. Or so they used to think, but then people started pushing their d-pawn to d5 in all the positions, which is the one thing white can do here and can't do against knight f5. So maybe that's where Niclas is getting at. Maybe he's saying, I don't want them to put the d-pawn on d5. I want to go knight f5. I'm willing to pay the price. Keep more pieces on the board, and after knight f5, knight f3, play d5. I don't think the trend is going to go there. So Niclas is saying after d4, Levon has been playing, he's been playing knight e8, d5, bishop c5. And before that he's been playing, what has he been playing? Bishop f6, rook e1, knight to f5, which is the game that Levon went on to lose to Carlsen after this d5, rook e8, what was it, takes, and queen to d3 in Norway chess. So Niclas is saying, what happened to rook to e8? Isn't this the clear-cut way to equalize? And I sort of agree. I thought rook e8 was the main move in this position, and I don't know of any particular problem, really. I do believe that it's a little more precise than knight f5, and I'm curious why Levon has not been playing it. My best guess would be that he's not concerned about the slow lines, whatever, c3 or rook takes, knight e8, c3, where black goes d5 and you shuffle pieces around a little and then it's equal. White hasn't been showing anything there for quite a while. So my best guess is that he thinks that this approach, pushing the d-pawn to d5, is more dangerous here than in the position with the knight on f5, which I'm not sure about. Here we've seen some recent games, no? We've seen some Giri Kayakin and stuff like that, where like d6, knight d2, bishop g5 was played, which did look like a somewhat better version than the, what was it, Carlsen Aronian game with the knight on f5 from black's point of view, but still maybe gives white some chances to push for an advantage. And there was this very recent game where, who was it? I think Vichy against Caruana played b6, which I haven't studied in any great depth yet, but it looked like a very interesting plan. Maybe leaving the d6 square available for the knight and trying to get the pieces out in a somewhat different manner. Bishop b7, maybe bishop to e5. I thought this was a clever idea. So in the game, knight c3 was played and takes d6. Now that the structure has been altered. I believe, even though I'm a big two bishops guy, that with no pawn breaks on the queen side available, this should be quite right for black. This is the game, right? You know, some mild pressure, but should be fine for black. So yeah, maybe after d5, d6, white can try something else, but I couldn't see anything all that convincing. Carlsen's style would be some queen d3, or in the spirit of this Carlsen Aronian game, but here it doesn't hit this guy. So bishop b7, knight c3. Random moves. It did look like black was doing okay. So no, I'm not really sure what is bothering Slyph on there. Because as far as I know, all these lines with rook e1, rook e8, they're pretty exhausted if white doesn't go d5. And after rook e8, knight e8, d5, it does seem like a somewhat better version than this position. Even though I'm guessing it's the small differences there that one could argue about. To me it seems like, yeah, having the rooks off already is a better version for black. So I'm with you, Niclas, or I can't answer your question, which might be the same thing often. If I agree with the premise of the original question, it means I don't have that much to add. Then we have Niclas trying to help out LogicalNonsense there, but I think he got the position wrong. So, no. Next is IljaJoker saying, "Hi Jan, I have a question about the following position. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, a6. Is this Groundhog Day? Didn't I answer that twice in this very opening clink already? I think I did. Let's see the question though. Normally after 3 knight f6 I play Catalan, but after 3 a6 it looks like Catalan setup doesn't give white any advantage. Did someone reshuffle these questions? I might be losing my mind slowly, but I strongly feel like I've answered this exact question like last episode. If I didn't, and I'm going insane, I apologize, but I do think that I did, and I would urge IljaJoker to check out that episode, because I feel like it's literally this question. So we'll skip that one. Just a reminder. See, that's the point where it's gotten to, where I'm only 94% sure that I've already answered this, and I'm not dreaming about it, and mentally prepared for it. So, a6. If you don't want to go for the Carlsbad structure, which is arguably the most critical, g3, d takes c4. Seems fine for black, I agree with that. Therefore, the move that might be interesting is the move for knight b to d2, as Wesley so recently played. If you want to, get a more Catalan type of setup. c5, c d, e d, dc, when, black has an isolated pawn. I think this is quite playable. And if they go knight f6, you go g3. The game continues. Not saying white is necessarily better here, but it did seem like a better try than the immediate g3 when black goes dc4. And if we want to avoid the cd, ed structure, that's the best I can see. I'm still struggling, trying to figure out if I said exactly the same thing last week or not. Or maybe I changed my answer. Anyway, best of luck with this knight bd2 move, IljaJoker, I do think. That's the best try we got. After c5, cd, there was also c takes d4. But here, what do I want to do? So like some queen a4 check, b5, queen takes d4. And the computer says black is okay, but he does have this isolated pawn. And maybe we can follow the golden rule. Give as many queen checks in the opening as possible. Go queen e5, bishop e6, knight d4, queen d7, e4. And it still looks like black is under some pressure. So that's what I would recommend. Knight b2. And after c5 take. And then take it from there. Apologies if I had not answered that question and I'm going insane. It's not impossible. What's going on here? ViciousSeal. He's saying, hi Jan, I have a problem against the Reti. Against 1c4, I would want to play the, in my opinion, strongest move, 1e5. Is this another one that I feel like I've already answered? Maybe they've reshuffled the questions to mess with me and see if I notice. If I did, the answer, if they did, the answer is, kind of, but can't really recall it. So apologies. After 1c4, I would want to play, in my opinion, strongest move, 1e5. After 1d4, I seek to play the Grünfeld. Therefore, I usually play one knight f6 if my opponent starts one knight f3, hoping they will play d4 at some point. What I tend to get is something like the following variation. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. Bishop g7, bit of a mistake if you're a Grünfeld player, no? e4, and you have to play King's Indian or Maroczy. d5. And which would be fine for me if they'd go d4 here, but usually they would play e4 now. Yep, that is pretty much the point of that move order. Anyone who goes one knight f3, 2 c4 will play e4 there, because we're doing all that stuff to move order out of the Grünfeld. And the Maroczy structures I get here, I just don't like, rightly so. Where do you think I should change my plans? What is your suggestion to avoid the Maroczy structures best? If possible, I would want to give my opponent the most opportunities to get back to a normal d4 line. I understand. The other thing I probably have to mention is that I don't want to play the King's Indian. So for d6 after e4 isn't an option as well. I hope you can help me. Thanks for all your work. Thanks, ViciousSeal. I believe we've had, not this question, but a similar question before. And yeah. Normally, your repertoire against one knight to f3 should depend on your repertoire against d4. I'm not quite sure. I am going to be, or I've finished recording, and maybe these days it will be coming out, my video series against one knight f3 and one c4. But my video series assumes that our repertoire is to play d5, knight f6, or knight f6, e6, the Nimzo Indian, and the Queen's Gambit. So I'll be talking a lot about one knight f3, d5. Well, as a Grünfeld player, I believe you should have a choice between two directions here. One is, if you're also a Sicilian player, you can play 1c5, which is a move I quite like, especially if you're not afraid of 2e4 here. And then after c4, go knight to c6, and after knight c3, play one of g6, which is not the Maroczy, it's an independent line, or e5. Which, yeah, these are lines MVL, probably together with Svidler, the biggest Grünfeld player out there, has been playing quite a bit. So that's one logical spot to look. But you also mentioned that you would like to give white as many chances as possible to transpose back to regular d4 openings, which in your case is the Grünfeld. That leaves you with two choices. One is knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6. As you've been playing, and after knight c3, go d5. Bishop g7, e4. Yeah, this is just not what you want. So go d5 here. Sorry. The problem with d5 is that, of course, you're dreaming of d4, bishop g7, and you're back in the Grünfeld groove, or even cd5, knight d5, e4, knight c3, bc, bishop g7, d4, c5. The problem is, white players will not do you that favor. That's why they chose this move order, so they can play the most annoying anti-Grünfeld line here. So you'd have to learn a lot of theory starting in this position that only applies to this position. There's a move queen b3, which is serious. After knight b6, d4, things are a little different than in normal Grünfeld. There's all these lines that I was playing with queen a4 check, bishop d7, now queen b3 or queen h4. There is g3, and there is a line that I also played recently, the move h4, which looks a little ridiculous, but it's not dumb with the center still intact to go for this h4, hoping to provoke h5, and if not, you know, keep teasing the black queenside. I keep getting kingside, queenside wrong. I'm sorry. Bishop g7 as h5, but also the dollar approach, which is of course what I've been doing. e4 takes, king takes, which is surprisingly difficult for black to handle as well. So long story short, this is the line that's most consistent with the Grünfeld, but current Grünfeld heads, they don't like doing this that much because it gives white a lot of serious options. So what they are doing is to play c5 here, and then meet the most common move, knight c3 with d5. Once again, after cd, knight d5, you want white to play d4 when you would take and play g6, and home sweet home. Again, this position has its own set of theory, but this set seems currently a little more friendly than the set with g6. White chooses between e4 here, which leads to sharp play. Stuff like this, bishop c4, knight d3, king e2, knight f4, king f1. Now either back or knight to e6 with very messy positions. There's the current fashion, e3, knight c3, d takes c3, now either the endgame or queen to c7. I think queen c7 the current favorite, which probably equalized, but is interesting, and you need some sort of game plan after g3. Here you can choose between g6 and these, whatever they're called. Rubinstein, some reverse Marocci stuff. We go knight c7, attending e5, bishop e7. So I believe that's a decent set of lines. You also need a game plan against the line I've been playing quite a bit. The move 3 d4 here, where I normally give this speech that objectively best is to play this, knight c6, e6, and take it from there. Which I still do consider to be the best. However, it might not be that consistent with the Grünfeld repertoire. And if you want to minimize work here, I think Svidler gave some line with g6, knight c3, d5, which is more in the Grünfeld spirit. You might want to check that out. There's also some idea like playing d5 here immediately, which is not very theoretical after cd5, knight d5, e4 to play knight b4. The positions might look a little more Grünfeldian, or e4, you can also go knight f6. The positions might look a little more Grünfeldian than the other ones, and you might minimize work a bit. Still, objectively, I will always ride for knight c6, knight c3, e6, which I think is fine for black. So to sum up, as a Grünfeld player, your choices are c5, knight c6, or c5, c4, knight c6, leading to independent positions, which yeah, I think are quite playable for black. Knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, which is the most Grünfeldian, but also allows the nastiest anti-Grünfeld sidelines currently, in my opinion, and the current favorite of guys like MVL and Nepomniachtchi to play c5, knight c3, d5, which, yeah, also gives white some options here, like e3 or e4 or g3, but is probably the closest you will get to Grünfeld play without having to deal with all kinds of crazy h4s. Yeah, that's all I got. Best of luck dealing with it, but yeah, don't play 3 bishop g7 here if you're not a King's Indian player, in my opinion. That was Mr. ViciousSeal. Mediv? He's saying, hello Jan, I have a question regarding 1f4. Those are my favorite questions, as we all know. Over the recent years, I managed to build a stable report repertoire against all possible openings, thanks to Chess24. That's good to hear. The only opening I can't find a comfortable way is with black against white's 1 knight f4, followed by knight f3, e3, d4, bishop d3 setup. My recent line goes like this. f4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, e3, bishop g4, d4, e6, bishop d3, c5, c3, knight c6, castles, bishop d6, queen e1. Can you hint a plan what to play for after this point? Or would you never get into the setup? Also, it would be great if someone from Chess24 would make a short series against 1 f4, since everyone says play d5 and you're equal. Yeah, that sounds about right. But I just can't find a clear plan. Thanks. Mediv. Alright, let's get to it. My knowledge pretty much does end after 1 f4, d5 indeed. Even though I have some thoughts on some topics. So, first let's answer the question. In the line, you're giving d5, knight f3, knight f6, e3, bishop g4, d4. I think, was it d4 here? Yeah. This is not scary at all for black, and I'd very much take black here. Castles, bishop d6, queen e1 is what you mentioned. There's one important strategic point, not just after queen e1, but also after h3, for example. But especially after queen e1. We are very happy to play bishop f5 in all these positions and take the double pawn. So after queen e1, I would play bishop f5 instantly. And I would claim that I'm better with black here. White will typically take ef and at some point play knight e5. Because the white structure with his pawn on e3 is worse than the black structure. After dc, bishop c5 might look, oh, we have weak pawns. But what really matters is this bishop is now really bad. This pawn is not a pretty sight. And black has very, very active pieces, castles, rook e8. So dc, bishop c5 would be wrong. And if they go knight e5, we just, continue developing. What we're waiting for is for white to put his other knight here, like the stone heads. That's what I like to call stone players. We'll typically do. Then we'll go knight e4, play f6, kick this knight out of e5, and say, haha, I'm better. Well, as long as his knight hasn't moved, we just play useful moves, like rook to c8. Whatever white does, I don't know what he does. Queen h4, rook e8. And once again, we meet knight df3 with knight to e4. Well, black still has more useful moves to make. G6. Push pawn on the queen side, maybe. As for white, it's not obvious what he wants to do there. My computer in this position already says minus 0.74, which translates to a very serious black advantage. So, long speech short, this is a bad system for white, and bishop f5 is a very strong move. Once you start mastering that idea, or start mastering that idea, well, I think this solves all your problems. Queen e2, for obvious reasons, is not what white wanted, exchanging these bishops. So pretty much, go here and you'll be fine. Generally, I don't think white should play the reverse stonewall if black has not committed to g6 or e6 yet. If he goes g6 or e6, then it's a different story. But after bishop g4, these setups where white voluntarily goes for this, I think it's just beautiful for black. And you've made all the right moves. e6, c5, knight c6, bishop d6, castles, bishop f5. Black's better. The one reason why I'm never quite sure if I would want to play this line with black is when I was very young, like 10 years old, I read this, one of my first chess books called Kasparov's Schacheröffnung, which I've often mentioned, which gave a repertoire against 1 f4. And it gave knight bd7, bishop b2, c6, with this plan that I remembered. I still remember it. After bishop e2, we want to take short castles, go e5, takes, and then we want to checkmate white with a quick bishop d6 and h5, which indeed, this position seems very, very pleasant for black. But as I grew older and unfortunately never had to face 1 f4, I started wondering in this position, can white do better maybe and play h3 here, when here probably bishop f5 is less great because we get harassed with g4. So you would have to take queen f3, queen c7, intending e5. In this position I'm not so sure about, because here white goes g4, grabs space, e5, knight c3. He's not going to castle into the attack. He's not going to do us the favor of opening the center. And this might be a little bad for white because of the two bishops and the space on the queen side. So I had my doubts if I want to go for this position, if they go b3, not d4. Even though I checked recently, and the computer says you can play h5 here, stopping g4. Yeah, it's actually decent. So that does strike me as not a bad idea. Now we can still follow up with either h4, fixing the side, or queen 7 e5, now that g4 is no longer possible. So maybe this line was fine all along, and all it needed was a little h5. Then I did talk a bit about some other f4 lines out of different mover. I think I talked about them in like g3, d5, bishop g2, knight f6, f4 movers. I talked about g6, knight f3, bishop g7 in my new video series on how to deal with one knight f3 and one c4, which I now realize doesn't really apply to one g3, the title. But I talked a bit about that anyway, and mentioned why I think that the reverse Leningrad is a pretty good line for black either. So I hope that my answer combined with that reverse Leningrad thing in the new video series will give you that repertoire against one f4 that you've been looking for. Otherwise, I will add it to mental notes that maybe one day we need the repertoires against one b3, one knight f4, one f4. Damn scary lines out there. Thanks, Mediv. John 2008 is saying, hello Jan, I'm a premium member now. I do not think that that is true. But the good news for you is I also do have a chapter on how to defend against the King's Indian attack in my new video series, which as a premium member you can then check out. Let's see what Slyph is. I think Slyph is our last question for the day. And he's saying, hi Jan, I've been studying Paco's French repertoire, and I have a little worry in a line he proposes in the Wien hour. You're gonna make me defend not only Paco, but also the French? That's a tough proposition, making me talk about one f4, even though at least that was from Black's point of view. And now about the French. So he's saying, hi Jan, I've been studying Paco's French repertoire and I have a little worry in a line he proposes in the Wien hour. 1 e4, a6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, a3, bishop c3, bc, knight e7, queen g4, knight g6, h4, h5, queen g3, c4, knight e2, knight c6. 7 knight g6, that's what Paco Boy gives? Looks shady, doesn't it? No offense, I'm just, reacting in real time. At this point, Paco says that the typical plan is to play bishop d7, bishop a4, queen a5, and castle queenside. However, after 11 knight f4, knight e7, knight g6, Paco tries fg, but the computer suggests a4 is very strong. The idea is to avoid bishop a4 and also queen a5, as bishop a3 is more or less winning here. Do you see an, I don't know how to pronounce the word, antidote? Must be antidote. Thanks for all, Slyph. Alright, let's put it on le board. 1 e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4. The Wien hour. This is like its own science. I think it has rules. I just don't know the rules. It's such a complicated position. This Black gives us good bishop, but White gets these double pawns and this immovable queen side. Then he has this space advantage on the king side where he can try to checkmate us. It's a tough line that we know. a3, bishop c3, bc, knight e7, queen to g4. Here the main lines, of course, start with either this stuff, cd, which is, very, very messy. But at least, it's computerish. It's move by move, so you can check these things out. Or short castles, which I think is no longer very popular these days, even though I'm not quite sure why it fell out of fashion. Anyway, knight g6, bit of a rare line suggested by Paco there. Knight to g6, h4 looks very logical, h5, queen to g3, now we need to support this guy, I guess. c4, stopping bishop to d3 is the first step. And typical French structure that I don't understand. Knight e2, looks logical. Intending to go knight f4, knight c6, knight f4, knight ce7. Adding support to our friend there. Knight takes g6, fg is what Paco suggests. It makes sense to put the king here and then the knight on f5 to hang in there. And was it 13 a4? Sorry, I have to go back, have a look. But yeah, the computer suggests 13 a4 is very strong. Yeah, I'm not gonna say black is fully equal here, but I always struggle like finding a plan from the white side as well. To my mind, it makes a lot of sense to just stop this pawn in its tracks because I don't want it to gain more space. Also, it might be a weakness if we fix it. So I would just suggest going a5. Like, I don't know what white does after bishop a3. We can pretty much just sit and wait here. Go king f7, probably put the knight here. And it's not obvious to me how white proceeds. Like I said, I'm not a French player and I'm not sure if this line is any good for black. But I would guess that things aren't as simple as they seem here, if Paco gave it. Or actually they don't seem that simple. Bishop g5 is a move worth thinking about, trying to pin. We have knight f5 here. Petite combinaison, knight d8, knight g3, queen f4, queen c7. And yeah, it's tough positions. Bishop wants to go here, probably here. Black wants to wait where he wants to put his king. And I'm not sure if the bishop is more effective here or on a3. It looks scary in both places, but it does have a bit of the empty diagonal problem sometimes, that there's not so much to attack on either this diagonal or the other one. So, as I said, gun to my head, I would take white in this position, and I understand your concerns, but it's also a very tough position to break down. And I do think that a5 is probably black's best bet if we want to go for this position. Then intending king f7, knight f5, bishop d7, and take it from there. If I would dare to play this with black, I'm not that sure. Like, I'm not a French player, and if you made me play this position, I would go to my space-barring tendencies and play the line with queen c7 or cd4. Those often transpose into each other, as far as I know. So I would be looking at stuff like this if I tumbled into this. While there's knight g6 or lines like this, or also king f8, or all this stuff, knight f5, knight g6, king f8, they're too slow and strategic for my liking. And yeah, this position we were just talking about, a5 is the best that I can see from black's point of view, but I do understand your concerns. Hope that helps, or if not, then I would encourage you, spend some time on this stuff. It's fun, at least. Then again, my idea of fun might be different than other people's idea of fun. That's it for today. I hope you had fun watching. The usual apologies at the end for my confusion about what questions I've answered or not answered. But in general, I feel like even if we've seen questions before, sometimes, theory might have changed, even though probably not from week to week. Sometimes I might have said something different the last time. So we'll try to keep it fresh, keep the questions coming, and shout out to LogicalNonsense, who gave us some very relevant information in this series, in this episode. Okay, I'm done mumbling. Thanks for sitting through this. See you soon. Bye.